Hi, welcome to Jargonless. We are a podcast about creativity that tries to help people make smarter decisions about their brands and do so in a way that is plain spoken and approachable. I'm your host, Tom, and today we're going to have a great conversation with Ami Talley. He's a creative director at RBB, and we're going to dive into some of the big trends that he's seeing in design right now, what he thinks is working, what he thinks is just hype, and maybe a little bit about where things are headed next. We'll talk about some AI-assisted design and how that's changing the creative process for better or for worse. And it's mostly worse. And we're going to talk about design systems and where you need a full-blown design system and where you can just kind of get by with a basic brand design package. We'll look at some examples and talk about how we arrived at them. Ami, let's get into it, man.
What's up, Tom? Thanks for having me. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here. Been a long time coming. We have rescheduled this 4 times, but that's life in the big city. So introduce us to Ami Talley. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah. So I've been a designer for a long time. I studied digital design in college. I have worked in the industry for over 10 years and at RBB now for coming up on 7 years. Time flies, I guess, when you're having fun. Many of those years, I guess, we shared together.
Yep.
As well. And yeah, things have been going great. It's another exciting year. We're off to a good start.
Well, that's awesome, man. Appreciate you coming on today. You're somebody whose approach and POV, point of view to the work that we do is always endlessly exciting and fascinating to me. And I really enjoy working with you and seeing what you come up with.
We have we have a great working relationship, and it's cool to bring the fire sometimes. And then sometimes you need a kick in the butt to kind of make the direction become clear. But yeah, we've definitely found the way for a lot of these projects that we'll share today.
Yeah, awesome. So I think, we like to start with a little thing we call yuck and yum, right? So it's just trends that, you're seeing in kind of design, creative design, advertising, wherever your sort of travels take you, things that you like and things that maybe you don't like so much or think aren't working. So would love to, I know you graciously put together a deck for us. So I'd love to take a look at some of that.
Yeah. So this is all kind of with the perspective that of our clients, of our day to day. Of course, like larger things that are kind of moving in the design world. But really, like, what tools do I use in my job every day for our clients when we're looking at a rebrand, when we're looking at a campaign? Where does it make sense? And kind of in that RBB umbrella that we live in. So, one of the focuses for this year that I'm really excited, and I know we talked about using 3D objects, making kind of very static designs come to life with just a little bit of motion or movement is something that I really want to start focusing on in my design and in my approach. I think this can be like an exceptional tool also just in presentation, selling a rebrand, right? Like a little bit of flair goes a long way in a boardroom or in a presentation Zoom call. So making it move, having a little bit of film or moving photography beneath your logo or word mark, whatever, really goes a long way. This is something, like I said, we're absolutely focusing on here. We're looking for the right opportunity. We're trying to integrate it into our workflows. So kind of definitely a yum, I guess we'll say.
Well, and it only makes sense, right? As everything starts to, all of our communication methods and advertising and everything starts to just contract, down to our phone, our desktop, our computer, or, our television, which now has, digital capability. How much is too much, I guess, would be the question. Like,
Yeah.
what's your thinking about, where do you find the line when you can make everything glow and move and have sound and, like how is your, like, what's your methodology or what's your approach for thinking about like when and how you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, the sky is the limit. In this case, my technical ability is the limit. So, I'm not a motion designer, but I have some kind of knowledge and a little bit of subtlety in the way I approach it, which goes a long way. So it's not about, a very complicated design system where you have things flying in and out, changing colors, morphing, changing shapes. It's really about like, how can you stop the scroll on an Instagram feed for 1 second longer, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's integrating a little bit of change in color, change in tone. It's adding a shimmer, a shine, a little note. It's really about the minimal lift for me, because I know we're moving quickly. We're trying to get things out in a heartbeat. So I don't have ages to spend on motion design. And the good news is all the tools are really kind of trending in the right direction. Things are getting easier and easier. You can throw a video into a composite behind a logo and export in seconds. So that's the good news.
Yeah. So you would see it as like a spice in a stew, right? Not
exactly
the main course. Awesome.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not doing tons of social feeds at the moment. I'm really looking at it from kind of a branding perspective, and just that's kind of like my approach at the moment. It's okay. We have this new mark, this new logo. We have a mask, which is like the shape of the logo that can hold an image. How can we integrate video? How are we making sure that it's top of mind when we're rebranding, when we're creating something for a client? So they have this extra tool in their tool belt if they want to spend the time, if they want to make sure everything can kind of move and be eye-catching.
Cool. Awesome. What's next?
Yeah, so that's it transitions us into really my design approach at the moment, and I'm a big fan of minimalism. We have a lot of corporate clients at RBB. We do a lot of rebrands and refreshes, and I think a minimalistic approach is oftentimes the right approach. Right? It's about resetting, laying the groundwork, kind of giving some rules, and kind of restraining the chaos of a brand that's kind of gone to the wayside after all these years. So I love minimalism. I think a photo and a small mark can go a long way. Very clean typography, big headlines, things like that are right up my alley.
Nice. Yeah, this stuff is great. Is that Run On? Is that?
Yeah,
They
exactly.
were
a nice Swiss company, obviously. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for them to be clean and tight.
Yeah, and what I like about these examples is that how much of the character of the brand can be communicated through just a few marks, right? You can start to get a sense of how they consider themselves and what they're about, and just at a glance when it's done right.
And I think like that minimalist approach changes whether you're talking from a branding perspective or from a campaign perspective. I think in campaign work, advertising, social, you have a lot more opportunity to really shake it up, to do something for a few months, to work with a designer or an artist to kind of bring life to campaigns. So it's nice to when you're very clean and minimal. It's nice also to let your hair down, I guess. But from a rebrand perspective, I know oftentimes, we're finishing the work, we're passing it off to another team. And if you have, the contrary, a maximalist approach where you have a lot of layers, a lot of complicated typography, things are getting stretched and warped, and you're limiting readability. It can be a lot for an inexperienced team to take on. Honestly, it can be a lot for an experienced team to take on. So yeah, it totally has its place. But from a branding perspective, I think minimalism is a great place to start.
Nice. What's next?
Well, makes sense. The contrary is maximalism. We touched on it a little bit. I mean, it's cool. I guess it's a yum for the aesthetic and a yuck for my personal kind of skill set. I think I rarely work in this direction.
Sure.
There's a lot kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm old.
No, it's so easy to lose the plot, right? And I liken it to abstract art or non-objective art, right? Where the reason that the reason that Mark Rothko's work is amazing and beautiful is he can capture something from life perfectly. He has that training to render anything he wants in paint or in charcoal or in pencil. Like he's was a trained visual artist, and he's taking that knowledge base and he's applying it to, abstract art, making these beautiful color fields that glow and that take hundreds of hours to paint. And this kind of design, if you don't know what you're doing as a designer, like it's so easy to break. Yeah. So easy to make really bad compositions and just really poor designs that don't serve the purpose that they were, like, you were paid to make them serve. They don't communicate what needs.
And it's also a style that's already trying to kind of straddle the line, right? Yeah. It's like it's not necessarily objectively good or bad. It's kind of just like it's more. It's everything. Right. So, it's hard to be objective, but certainly I know when it's good or bad, in my head.
Yeah, I think, and again, to me, it boils down to the training of the person who's, and the aesthetic and the knowledge of the person who's doing the design, right, or the art direction.
Totally. Yeah, and this is one of the examples. Like, I think big giant companies, right? Like, I think in all these examples, I could have a Nike campaign.
Well, and it's of course, but they have, and it really is. I think, for anybody who's working on a smaller brand, a consumer brand who might be listening to this, if we're allowed to offer advice, it would be, I would go minimalist on your corporate communications or your advertising. And then if you want to explore this kind of work, carve out a channel in your socials to be more experimental. But, I don't know that I'd necessarily go all in on this, but I see it as a response to blanding, which has, been one of the big trends of the last 10 years. Where everything is becoming increasingly minimalist and increasingly monochrome, and increasingly it's just one font, and that font is Helvetica or New Haas Grotesque. So I like to see it, but I don't want to design it.
Yeah, for the next one, we have what we're calling blanding today. So, there was that great Google refresh once upon a time where they simplified kind of their logo and their mark all the way down to a typeface. Of course, their brand is a lot deeper than that now, and Google has like sub brands that are minimalist, maximalist. They're all over the place. Yeah. But that trend of a logo rebrand kind of extended way too far into everyone's brand, and all those really kind of interesting logos and marks of our youth and childhood, whatever, disappeared into like very bland and generic shapes and fonts. So definitely a yuck on that.
And it's interesting where, and this happened, there's historical precedent for this too, right? Because this happened in the 60s where all of these old blue chip brands, JP Morgan, these brands that had been around for a century and had a century's worth of baggage, from a design perspective, all went in for these rebrands and they all landed in the same place. And it was just, some stripped out modernist logo and Helvetica, and I think there's something really attractive about just jettisoning all of that baggage. But I think, you do so at kind of your peril, like,
yeah, I mean, the good news is like, once you do it, you get some press and then you can do it again. It's just that a lot of the trending has been like, we're minimal. No, we're even more minimal. Now we have zero character.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see now, like, oh, hey, remember, like, we used to have some character. We're going to introduce it again. And actually, that's kind of something I'm going to talk about next.
Cool. Yeah, let's see it.
Yeah. So the idea of nostalgia in design is totally back. And again, it's not necessarily back from a branding perspective, but in social and advertising, it's very prevalent, something that I love to see. It all kind of, it helps us remember a better time and a better place in our lives. Late nights at Taco Bell in the early 2000s for me, it's cool to see their brand kind of resurface. But aesthetically super pleasing, and it gives us like, a really wide net to cast when we're thinking about photo style or logo style, things like that. It's kind of nice that we can reference, 50 years of work now, and it's appropriate to kind of use it again. Okay, so now we can like finally just go ahead and say it. AI driven design.
Yeah,
it's cool. We all, I attended Adobe Max this year here in Miami Beach, and it was like a glimpse at a really interesting future, having an amazing set of tools that are AI driven, being able to create imagery and video right there in the moment. I don't know. I think it's great. We don't use it a ton at the moment, but I know that you're leading the charge kind of on integration and figure out ways for our clients to use AI driven technology.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to close the gap for smaller brands who don't have a lot of money to get things that if you've got somebody who's doing the prompts correctly and you have the right tool, you can get a result that looks really good without a lot of money, right? So that really, to me, is what is driving my conversations with our clients about AI, is clients who come to us who don't have $150,000 to execute a campaign in real life, or $1 million to shoot a commercial. How do we elevate their presence and give them production value and production quality that they're not going to be able to get through stock or through us just designing away. They need specific pieces of collateral, or pieces of final delivered pieces that have that animation, that have that that wow factor to them. And I think if you use AI strategically and smartly, and you're pairing it with the right art director and the right concept, the right campaign concept, or the right design, you can end up with a really powerful result. But much like, even worse than maximalism, it's very easy to just get something that's absolutely hideous when you let the machine just do what the machine wants to do.
And there's two sides to it, right? Like, we can talk about it from a designer's perspective, where I'm using these tools every day to edit photography, to enhance imagery, to help fill in gaps for frames that are missing in video, or to help storyboard an ad spot or something like that, like this is where it's a no-brainer and it makes a lot of sense. It's just like, it makes my life easier. But then the other side of it is like when we're replacing actors or talent, and we're never sure exactly what we're going to get. It's, it's not as easy as pushing a button, like you said, right? You need to put in the work. You need to train the models to get any sort of result. So, we're going to see it a lot in our social feeds. Designers are going to use it to kind of get these, wow, that looks so cool posts.
Yeah.
But there isn't necessarily a lot of depth there, and it doesn't really translate to client work a lot of the time.
I don't think it does. And I think, one of the trends that I'm watching very closely is what I'm calling AI blindness, where I think that there is a visceral revulsion, a reaction to a lot of AI work because of its smack dab in the middle of the uncanny valley. Like this doesn't, this thing that appears to be human is not human, and it disgusts me. And I think that a lot of people, I know myself, two of my favorite, not favorite, but like two musical acts that I really like. One, Pete and Baz, and I don't know if you're familiar with Pete and Baz. They're two like 70-year-old drill rappers from the UK. And I fucking love them more than. Yeah. I mean, they did a video that was all it was all done in Sora. It was AI done, and I couldn't. And I love their music. I couldn't listen to 5 seconds of it because it was all just these hideous shots of ersatz fake versions of them, like. Walking through the streets of fake London with, a gun held in a hand that has 12 fingers, and their eye would like vibrate off. It's just bad. So why don't we talk about the meat of what we want to talk about today, which is design systems and the concept of design systems. And we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive on a couple of clients that we've done design work for over the last year or so. And I'm going to let you take the lead and, I don't know, explain to us a little bit about what a design system is and why it's important.
Yeah. So first of all, I have a couple examples. One of our clients, Exelon Global.
Yeah.
And another one, Andretti Global, two global clients with global in their name. But both of them brand refreshes. So a brand refresh means that this is kind of already an existing brand. They might already have a brand guideline. They already have a logo that's in use, a website. And kind of our job is to take elements that already exist and integrate them into new branding, or potentially, get rid of elements and look at where we need to start fresh. So Exelon Global is our first example. This is their original logo here on the left, and this is where we landed on the right. They're a private security company. Originally started as a logistics company that was kind of in the shipping sector, moving a lot of stuff overseas and in planes and things like that. So kind of that's where this directional arrow came from, and that idea of like logistics in their name. So we wanted to keep that. We wanted to keep that little splash of orange, but we wanted to kind of make it a little bit more recognizable, a little stronger. And we use that idea of the X throughout the branding. So we have it here as a mask. So that X mark can hold an image inside of it. This was a great solution for this client because they don't have a ton of photography. And when they use photography, we don't really want it to overwhelm the page. So we don't want it necessarily to be the highlight of the piece. And so kind of holding it in this X, it gives like some beauty. It's very interesting. it's another way to reinforce that logo, but it's not all about the photo. It's kind of like, oh wait, how does this kind of relationship, what does this relationship mean? And then we also have this pattern where, there's some movement as video plays behind it. You can see it shift from light to dark, side to side, kind of reinforcing the idea of movement, of logistics, of cartography, precision, things like that. Kind of, these are all kind of words that we wanted to keep in mind in this rebrand.
Cool. And so this element of the logo becomes basically a design asset, or just a piece of the puzzle that can be used in a lot of different ways and places.
Exactly. So yeah, when we talk about a kind of a design system, in this case, it was pretty minimal. It was about, taking their original branding, and then creating something that reinforced a tone or a feel that was more in line with their brand at this moment. So I thought of everything kind of serving a purpose. Like, everything really needs to be a tool. There's no BS. It's not really like ornamented. There's not a ton of design. It's structured, gridded. It's informational. There's hierarchy in the typography. So what's most important is largest. Right. Kind of in a simple way to explain it. And then secondary, it's about just being able to digest the information quickly and clearly.
Right.
So the system was just reducing what they already had, making their primary color black and white, using this orange only in certain situations. In this case, it's only in their logo. It doesn't need to be on this page, right? Sure. It doesn't help with legibility. It doesn't need to be appealing. It's a tool.
Yeah. I think that's smart. And to me, also a big part of this, as we worked through this with this client, was really trying to drill down and understand who it was that they wanted to talk to, right?
Yeah.
And finding that insight, which was about, high net worth individuals and, Fortune 100 and 500 companies, and, being able to communicate to them the gap in their appearance, right? Between that gap in perception of what they look like versus, I think, what the expectations might be of their desired audience. And it's pretty wide, right. And it's not that any of the design that they have here is terrible. I mean, it's not great, right? And we can sit here and be design snobs because this is the world that we live in, and we could drag it if we wanted to, but it's utilitarian and it works for what they needed it to do, but not necessarily for the people that they wanted to talk to, which I think is one of the big things that I see over and over again, is that gap in brand perception, like who they are now versus who they want to be.
Yeah.
And I think
also it's funny when you look at kind of all the pieces and you're in the branding process, it's easy to kind of, right, like you said, knock things like, oh, this looks good or bad. But like, where does the client see it? Where does a potential customer see it in the funnel really matters, right? Like, a logo doesn't, in my opinion, make the whole difference.
Right.
Right. Like, you could still be a successful brand with either of these logos. You could be a successful brand with either of these midweek digests, right? These are for customers that they already have. So if they have an exceptional product and this is the way they communicate, it's totally fine. But things like website, marketing materials, social channels, those are all used to kind of entice customers or to start the conversation. So that's kind of where we also want to make sure the focus is.
Cool. So we got a few more pieces of this. And this, I don't think we need to go into super granular detail about each one of these, but this was really, this is 80% of the design system, right? I mean, other than that, we had a point of view on their photography. We had some fonts, a color palette, and, how to use the pattern, right?
Yeah. A primary logo, secondary logo. You have the mark, how it can be used as a mask for photography, how it can be used in a pattern. And then that's it. Yeah. Fonts, and that's it.
Just a few relatively powerful tools that we gave them to basically completely update their brand and change, everything, their entire touch point. So I guess, one of the points I'm trying to drive to is the difference between an Xlog and the design system you built for them, and the next example we're going to show, which is Andretti. And it really is just about scale, right? It really is just about, the places where they need to communicate. So the Andretti family is one of the most storied families in all of racing. It's 3 generations, starting with Mario, who is one of the greatest to ever do it and raced in a bunch of different leagues and won, I think, everything there was to win. And then his son, Michael, kind of began to follow in his footsteps. He didn't get to race Formula One I think the way that he wanted to, but he was a very celebrated IndyCar driver for a long time. He started this company called Andretti Motorsport. And that's really what he's been doing for the last, 2 decades plus, probably closer to 30 years, is building this company that, their mission is if it has 4 wheels and races, we want to be on that track. And, they came to us because they wanted to get on the Formula One grid, and they really needed to start thinking about, again, that gap in perception. And if you want to go to the next page, Ami, like they're, from where they were to where they wanted to be, it's like what you see on the left, this Andretti logo, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's a little dated. It's got its issues. It's not what I would design, right? I don't think it's what you would design either. But it worked for a company that was, running out of Indianapolis and was racing on 6 leagues around the world. But now you want to compete with Toto Wolff. Now you want to be next to McLaren. Now you want to be next to, Mercedes and all of these other giants, these global giants of the Formula One world. You have to meet that audience and their expectations.
Yep.
And that was what we were tasked with. And I'll let you talk about it, Ami.
Yeah, it was interesting, our approach, just to give a little bit of perspective. We kind of wanted to see how far the envelope needed to get pushed in the client's eye. So, we presented a few different ways starting with maybe a version close to this, and then one that was like far out. This is maybe where you want to be in 10 years, not tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think they chose the first one because they have a lot of heritage in their brand, a lot of Americana. There's a lot of symbology in the mark that they had. And it took a while to get all the story. And that was a big part of this project. Why the shield that they were using was so important, why they wanted a refresh of it, why they didn't want to lose it completely, was all really important to them. It was this kind of
that chevron.
The chevron on their helmet. Of course, red, white, and blue for kind of their American motorsport heritage. And I guess the story went that this chevron was pulled off a pack of smokes and slapped on a helmet once upon a time. Yeah. In the very beginning, and it kind of stuck. Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense to keep it going. And then also, like you mentioned, they have a ton of brands, and I'll give reference to that in the end. But it was just to think a little bit about, whatever we were creating needed to live through multiple brands that do many different things. So we needed to have a mark that's flexible, a mark that looks right at home on a business card or a toy box, as well as a mark that's going 250 miles an hour down a racetrack. So simplification kind of was the key, and giving that kind of direct transition from that chevron to the helmet into this new mark really helped sell this thing in.
Yeah. Well, and it tells the story in 5 seconds, right? How we
Yeah.
got from Mario to, Mario Andretti in 1960, whatever, to Andretti Global in 2024 or 2025.
Yeah. So then, thinking about the difference between Nextlog and Andretti, um, this picture shows a lot. It tells the story, right? The brand guideline for this, I think, is 80 something pages. We
Yeah.
talk about brand persona, core values, aspirational messaging. We have very extensive logo guidelines, multiple color palettes, how the mark can live on its own, how the word mark Andretti can live, merchandising guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
photography guidelines.
Yeah.
The list goes on.
And they're everywhere, right? So ultimately they're going to be on TV, they're going to be on billboards, they're going to be in print magazines, they're going to be, on tents at the races across 6 different, not just Formula One, but, Formula E and IndyCar and, a league in Australia. And so it's like every single thing, anywhere where they were going to show up, we had to think about what it was going to look like. And this is where you need like those really robust, well thought through design systems. So if you want to show some of that,
Yeah. So, I don't have specific slides showing our design system.
But just the world.
That's proprietary. But one thing I am proud of, we created this Andretti Pro custom font for them where we customized a font. We created the files. It's put to use across their brand in all their communication channels on their website. It's great to see kind of, this is like just for me, the brand is way bigger than just a font, but when you see it out in the real world, it's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
And then as well, seeing the logo on all the drivers' clothing and apparel, all the teams behind the scenes, the guys in the offices, all the corporate guys have it on their shirts. It's pretty sweet. It worked out really well. You should check out their website. Looks great. Some ideas for water bottles and merch. Their social has been excellent. They communicate across all their teams. So they have Indy, Formula E, Andretti Global. I don't remember them all. There are many. When you have consumer brands, racing brands, manufacturing brands, and they all are kind of consolidating under one mark, one name.
It's tough.
Text.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think, oh, maybe we could have done it better. Maybe it needs to be more complicated. I don't know. But this worked out really well.
I don't think it does, and I think a big part of a lift like this where you're dealing with, 12 subsidiaries and all of these other, it's about how you roll it out to the people who work at the companies, right? Yeah. And making it something that they're going to champion and rally around and be proud of, you know? Well, listen, man, any final thoughts, any advice you would have for, somebody who might be thinking about doing a brand refresh, starting a brand, commercial brand, or, what would you say to that person?
When I speak to friends about, my job and the work we do, oftentimes people, these are guys in that aren't necessarily in creative, and they're working through a rebrand themselves for the company they work for, the company they own. One thing I really reinforce is kind of the relationship and how important it is. It's about kind of being honest at the very beginning, kind of establishing who's going to make the decisions, how are we going to kind of facilitate the process. I think having like good communication is it's a beautiful thing. It makes our job so much easier. When you feel like you can't ask questions or you can't go back, and you start to guess, that's when things turn sideways a little bit. So Andretti and Xlog, were pretty smooth, I think, all things considered.
Sure.
Because we had kind of a good relationship with our client, and we shared the vision very early on in the process.
Yeah, to echo that, I think if we can invest in each other, a little bit beyond the transactional, right? Where it's not just you pay me and I make good logo. It's let's get to know each other. Let's find some chemistry and become partners, a little bit. Yeah. We don't want to change the way that you do business. We just want to change the way that it looks. And I think we can do it really well for you, but not if we don't understand you. So thanks for coming in and joining us today. And as always, there will be some links in the description if you want to take a look at where Andretti is in their quest to get on the Formula One grid, or some of the other work that we've done. And as always, we'll see you next time.